right, well, we're 2 months away from NFL football when week one of the preseason kicks off. And as training camp gets closer and closer, I'm starting to think about which guys are kind of flying under the radar a little bit because this
Hmm.
time of year, every season, there's always a name or two you never expected to end up sticking to the team. A guy who didn't have the maybe high draft pick label or the flashy numbers or play at the big program. We all know the story of Adam Thielen, local legend, walks on as a UDFA in training camp on his own college turf when they held training camp in Mankato, Minnesota. All he does goes on to become one of the best receivers and stories in Vikings history, and he ain't done yet. So I'm
Hmm.
not asking for the next Adam Thielen. That's like once in a decade scenario, maybe at most. But I'll start here. One guy I'm telling you to start circling right now on the roster. How about Luigi Villain? The more I got to study this guy, the more I got excited. You're talking about a four-star recruit coming out of Virginia. He signs with the Michigan Wolverines as a big-time get. I mean, a lot of excitement, high hopes for him there, but he never really saw the field there much, didn't pan out in Ann Arbor. And it makes sense, too, when you think about this, because look at the pipeline of talent Jim Harbaugh had on his D-line the past few years. Kwity Paye, 21st overall pick to the Colts. Aiden Hutchinson, maybe you've heard of him, number 2 overall pick. Rashawn Gary, 12th overall pick. Even David Ajabo, who would have been a first-round pick had he not torn his ACL during the pre-draft process. So there's only so many snaps to go around, mixed with a few lingering injuries. He kind of fell to the bottom of the depth chart, never was able to climb out of it. Takes his talents to Wake Forest and just goes off. 10 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 34 pressures, 2 forced fumbles. Dude was legit. And I don't want to hear that, oh, yeah, but he dropped in talent. I mean, he goes from Michigan to Wake Forest. We're still talking about the ACC. I mean, he's getting after guys like Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett. He's going up against other future NFL linemen. So I don't want to hear that. He played multiple spots, left side, right side, little 5 tech. Saw him stand up a little bit. He's only 6'3", but he showed a great punch on tape, uses his hands well. When you look at the Vikings defense front 7 depth chart and just ask yourself, all right, who's going to just stand up and just rush the passer? Obviously, Za'Darius is that guy. And Daniil will be in the mix too, but it sounds like I think Hunter may be moved around a lot this year as kind of a chess piece. So finding another guy or two just to stand on the edge and pass rush is something Ed Donatel and Mike Smith are going to have to be looking at in training camp. DJ Wanham, probably the next guy in line, but not a proven guy in this new defense. Patrick Robinson, he's got a chance for sure. But then you get to Villain, and I think he's got a real chance to make an early impression early in camp and find a way to stick on this 53-man roster. And when it's all said and done, it happens every year. Teams all find a UDFA or two that flashes enough, shows the tools for coaches to work with. 4-star recruit, just got buried on that all-star D-line at Michigan, but make no mistake, it wasn't from a lack of talent. When he finally got into the lineup at Wake Forest, again, he balled out. Luigi Villain, he's a guy I really like if you're making me pick just a UDFA that has a real chance of making the team, or at least minimum the practice squad to give coaches a nice developmental edge rusher in the mix you can develop and progress kind of in the background, right, behind the scenes. And that's important too because remember, Za'Darius is 31. Hunter hasn't proven he can stay healthy. If they go down, you better have another guy or two ready to step in and hold his own. And as a GM and coach, I mean, you always have to be looking at not just this year, but a year or two ahead as well. And given the structure of that Za'Darius contract, may turn out to be only kind of a 1-year rental deal when it's all said and done, despite those big, gaudy numbers. So who's another UDFA who you think maybe has the right tools for coaches to see enough and develop into a contributor for the Vikings someday down the road in your eyes?
Well, it's funny because you talked about who could be the next Adam Thielen,
Mm-hmm.
and this receiver room is stacked.
Mm.
And you're talking about guys that are, I mean, look, JJ,
Yep.
Thielen,
Yep.
KJ,
Mm-hmm.
and then now you're talking about maybe BC Johnson. You're talking about Jalen Naylor.
Albert
They
Wilson was
signed
just
Albert
brought in.
Wilson.
Yeah. Yep.
He's probably going to make an impact too on maybe like punt returns or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And I think, here are some names. I was looking at some stuff. And when you look at, I didn't even mention Amir Smith Marsett either.
Oh,
You know,
thanks.
he's going to be a guy
Mhm.
for them. He was key down the stretch last year with some of those injuries, especially to Thielen down the stretch. You know, you look at guys like Thomas Hennigan. He was a UDFA that, you know, could provide some spark or at least make the practice squad. And then I know you were talking to me a little bit before we started the podcast today about Tristan Jackson, who was taking some reps with Smith Marsett out, you know, in that walking boot the last few weeks of minicamp. And so Jackson is getting some of the reps. Former Ram, you know, O'Connell has a little bit of a history knowing this guy already. He was signed to the practice squad last season, and he was taking some of the reps. And that is a good chance for a guy to just kind of show and prove. I know it's mini camp, so you know, not really like taking hits and, you know, not really doing the full scope of what you would do in training camp, but that was a way for him to kind of shine a little bit and show his ability and what he can do to contribute to this team. We don't know how many receivers the Vikings are going to keep. And it's tough to talk about a guy making the 53-man roster at a position that is already so stacked with guys who have proven it at this level before. But why not him, right? Why not?
Because first, you got to say, okay, well, how many receivers are they going to keep? A lot of teams keep 5, but not unheard of to keep 6 or even 7 for sure, especially in a Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, pass-happy offense. That's certainly probability that that could happen. But you also mentioned, all right, I know it's just mini camp. I mean, the pads aren't popping yet, but it still matters because it tells you what coaches are thinking and where they have these players ranked and lined up right now. And Tristan Jackson and Olabisi Johnson with those other big names, KJ Osborne, Amir Smith Marsett out, that tells you something. I mean, that tells you right now that they're higher on the depth chart than some of those other guys. So we'll see how it unfolds and transitions into training camp. We'll see if they stay in that same mix. We'll see how long it takes Albert Wilson to kind of chew up the playbook and develop into that 4th or 5th guy. We'll see if Amir Smith Marsett is healthy by the time training camp rolls around, and if not, who's in that place. But you're right, I like that call out. Tristan Jackson, again, taking first team reps with Olabisi, it tells you something, maybe not the whole story, but certainly a little indicator, just to mark on your roster, a depth chart, just to keep in the back of your mind. Loaded wide receiver room, though, for sure. Something I'll be keeping a close eye on for sure as we get closer to kickoff of training camp. Just 5 weeks away, taking place at TCO facilities in Eagan. Guys resting up right now, enjoying that last little bit of free time they have before clocking into the 2022 season just around the corner.